Wren hadn't truly known what she'd been expecting to see when she entered the heretofore inaccessible western wing of the compound. Yet more scrolls on cultivation for her to learn, some strange new spirit beast for her to command, her master, nude, drizzled in honey and ready to be ravished. Admittedly, the last one had always been an unlikely option given his seemingly prudish nature, but a girl could always hope. She had not, however, been expecting this. Well, what do you think? Were it any other man, Wren might have said his tone was almost sheepish as he gestured at the room around him. And what a room it was. Wide and expansive, it was covered wall to wall with crimson silk curtains, in what was clearly an attempt to give the interior a less utilitarian feel. Despite the fabric's presence, Wren could still easily see the bare stonework that pervaded the rest of the compound, poking through in places. The ceiling likewise was left unadorned, though a number of lights had been placed there. The interior was dimmer than it should have been, with the strange artificial orbs of her master giving off less than a third of the illumination of which she knew they were capable. Perhaps the candles strewn across the room were an attempt to make up for that deficit, but all they really did was make her worry that the curtains nearby were in danger of going up in smoke at any moment. Still, overall theme the room was going for, that of some debauched Imperial Science pleasure chamber, was clear, and thus Wren could have forgiven all of the questionable design choices on display, were it not for the fact that where a bed should have sat stood something else. "It's nice," she lied, determinedly tearing her gaze away from what appeared to be some manner of peculiar seat come torture device. Despite everything else, it was actually rather cute how relieved her master was as he visibly sagged. "Really?" "Yes, it's very ambient," she continued. "I might perhaps make a few small changes myself, but I appreciate the intent." Or she thought she did. Had the room contained a bed, she might well have danced a jig. "Though I have to ask," she trailed off fleetingly, as she gazed at the mass of leather and steel sat in the centre of the room. All the tension that had seemingly leaked out of her master flowed back in again, as he stood up straight, eyes splitting between her and the device. He was clearly trying to gauge her mood, and as such, Wren obliged him by keeping her gaze pointedly interested. Finally, he took a deep breath, one that Wren easily recognized as the beginnings of someone preparing themselves to begin a well-rehearsed speech. "I am a man of very distinct tastes," he began, "ones I know that not every woman will share. This, in part, has been why I've been so reticent in returning your interest." Wren's ears twitched as she processed that. "But not Anne's?" She kept her voice calm and free of judgment. And to his credit, Jack didn't flinch. He was clearly prepared for the question. "Anne is weaker than you," he said instantly, "which is pertinent to me." Despite knowing in part that the man was clearly just buttering up, Wren's chest flared with pride at his words. She was stronger after all. The cat might have been irritatingly hard to catch with that damnable glaive of hers, but Wren's sword invariably came out on top on those occasions she managed to corner the other woman. Which was about 50% of the time. "As a result," her master continued, "my peculiarities have little bearing on my relations with her." Wren's brow furrowed. "But they do when it comes to me?" "They do because I like to be the dominant partner in the bedroom," he paused. "Physically." The dogwoman's confusion only grew. Was he saying he was weaker than her? He was a hidden master. He defeated an instinctive cultivator whose power was on par, if not superior to that of a Sect leader. He created an entire compound in a day using his... She paused as a realization hit her. Her master created the compound she dwelled in. He had worn armor for the fight with Kui. His greatest tools were not weapons, but spirit beasts yoked to his will. Her master was not a warrior. His skills lay elsewhere, and while he could fight, it was not his body but the tools that he commanded that were his greatest assets. Was it any surprise then that he might feel outclassed in a battle between the sheets? Yes, she could see why such an idea might be galling for a man who towered over others in every other aspect of his life. "And this device will give you the ability to act as the dominant one in any interactions between us?" Once more she kept her voice devoid of any judgment, as she looked at the peculiar chair with new eyes. Truth be told, she wasn't that bothered. A need for control was hardly amongst the most peculiar fetishes her master might have held. She'd heard of far worse in her time in the J Pavilion. Actually, from what he's saying, my former master and he would get along swimmingly, she thought, as she quietly determined to never let them meet. At least in any kind of intimate fashion. Across from her, the foreign man nodded. It would. She smiled. Yes, she could work with this. And she'd have suffered a lot worse if it meant she could finally get laid. To be honest, some small part of her was annoyed that her master hadn't brought this up to her sooner. Still, perhaps this could work in her favour. By accepting his shameful secret without complaint, she would elevate herself in his regard. With those words in mind, she strode past him to the device, moving confidently, but not commandingly. Keeping her eyes on his own, she ran a few delicate fingers across the leather armrest of the chair. In that case, this Talon Red would be delighted if the Great Master would show his ignorant apprentice how it functioned. Some part of her grated at being forced to act so infantile, but it was only a small part. It was just an act, and the two of them were in private. Across from her, Master Johansson smiled broadly, some of his usual gregarious confidence leaking back into his posture. Before we begin, he raised a finger, we should set boundaries. Ren cocked her head in confusion. What need have they of boundaries? If you, at any point, want me to stop, you should use a safe word. She pursed her lips. Safe word? He nodded. Something you'd never use during pillow talk or in the throes of passion. Something long and perhaps a little odd. As intrigued as she was by the idea of throes of passion, she couldn't help but feel a little insulted that he felt the need to give her an out if things got too much. Just because she was a merchant didn't mean she wasn't a cultivator. Anything the cat could endure, so could she. More even. Pancake would do, I suppose. She decided to oblige him anyway, with a word that no one would ever associate with sex. Pancake, he echoed with an approving nod. Sounds good. Gratified that they could now finally get down to what she'd been waiting for, she leaned towards him. Now, how about we silence? The words came so suddenly and with such a commanding tone that Ren went instantly still, heart freezing in her chest. The man grinned, nodding. Good. You can obey simple instructions. That means this won't be entirely a chore. The dogwoman's momentary surprise faded away, as rage took its place at the idea that being with her could be in any way a chore. She was 5 times the woman that scrawny cat he'd been screened could ever be. Ignorant, or perhaps fully aware of her outrage at the insinuation that she was somehow lacking, the man strode up to her, eyes roaming over her dress. Strip.
Whoa! Boss? What's going on? Who are these people? You want me to talk to them? Huh. Well, you're the boss. Hi everyone. This is Timo, the voice of Therium. The boss says he's a big fan of something called Net Narrator. He said you'd know what that meant, and that if you want to listen to the sex scenes of this video and others, you should subscribe to him on Patreon at the Space Commando tier to listen to it in full. The boss also says there are other goodies on Patreon too, and that Net Narrator has a merch store too. Oh, what's that, boss? Yeah, I was just getting to that bit. Therium also wants me to tell you to like the video, subscribe and leave comments to help Net Narrator in the YouTube algorithm, whatever that is, and that if you don't, he's going to send Poe out on an expedition to your mum's bedroom. Anyway, that's all from us. See ya!